Love the question coming in here from BGPO Football Funk. Appreciate the super chat contribution. You know that. So again, we saw maybe the game of the year in college football during the regular season. Clemson went to South Bend, overtime game in the 40s. We know about the Clemson personnel losses on defense, 3 of them. And then, of course, Trevor Lawrence was on the sideline, although DJ Uyunglele threw for 439 yards in that game. So he was a capable replacement, to say the least. We saw the rematch in Charlotte. Ian Book looked like a different guy. And, of course, Clemson kicked it into gear in the second half after pretty much a stalemate in the first quarter at 3-0. So how did you see the difference in games and approach?
Well, I think for me in the first game, Notre Dame benefited from the fact that they didn't have Trevor Lawrence and they didn't have Tyler Davis and they didn't have James Skalski. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. I mean, you look at the Clemson team that first time and everybody focus on the number of passes the number of passing yards DJ had in that game was 439. They averaged 6.14 yards per play because they couldn't run the ball. He's not a runner at this point. He doesn't run the read zone the way that Trevor Lawrence does. In the rematch, Clemson ran for 219 yards after running for 34 the first time. And the reason why is because you had a quarterback that brought some dual aspect to it. Clemson was able to still hit the big plays in the pass game, but they were also able to get the ball rolling with the run game. And I think the other difference is Notre Dame's defense scored. I mean, they scored on the first play of the game. Notre Dame scored on the second play of the game, 60-yard touchdown run against Clemson. They didn't score another offensive touchdown until the last play of regulation. They had their only other touchdown in regulation came on a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah fumble return for a touchdown. So Notre Dame only scored 26 points in regulation. They had 2 other field goals, and they couldn't put the ball in the end zone. They had too many times they settled for field goals. They turned the ball over in the end zone. Well, that happened again in the second one. Notre Dame was in Clemson territory on each of their first 3 drives and came away with 3 points. They had a missed field goal, and then they threw an interception on a drive. Or no, they had a 4th down turnover. They turned it over on downs. And when you're playing a team like Clemson, you can't drive the ball into their territory on each of your first 3 possessions and come away with 3 points because eventually Trevor Lawrence is going to hit a big play. They're going to make a stop. They're going to make a big play. Notre Dame held them to 34 points. I mean, that's not too far off of what they held them to in regulation the first time, which was 26 points. But when you're not scoring and you're not putting the ball in the end zone against teams like that, you have no chance. And it goes back to what I said before. Notre Dame was able to kind of jump on Clemson early, but it was 13-10 and Clemson got the ball. They had moved it right down the field the previous series, and Jeremiah Owusu takes the ball away from Travis Etienne, puts it into the end zone. Now all of a sudden it's 20-10, momentum shift. The very next drive, Clemson completes a 3rd down pass to Amari Rogers. Owusu comes up behind him, strips it out. They recovered a fumble. Notre Dame loses 3 yards on that next possession and still kick a field goal. So just like that, that's a 13-point swing where it was starting to look like the rematch looked, which is Notre Dame moved the ball early, then started to stall, couldn't put the ball in the end zone. Clemson came back. But instead in the first game, the defense stepped up and made some big game-changing plays that we didn't see in the second time because you can't rely on your defense to get you 10 points against Clemson every time you play. It's just not going to happen that way.